speaker for today, who is going to talk to us about managing emotions and counseling for hope in such time. This is a subject in which we should all be deeply interested because it is not only helping our profession, but an apt for a current scenario. Mr. Sundeep is an entrepreneur and talent and transformation specialist with 28 years of rich experience in services and corporate field, working with CXOs, helping develop career charts and professional development plans. Passionate about people development with an instinct outlook to discovering and focusing on developing people. He is also a national table tennis player. So over to you, Mr. Sandeep.
Thank you so much, Ruchi. I'll just share my screen and do let me know whether everybody can see it.
Sure, sir. Yes, we can see. I would also request everyone to please keep your keep yourself on mute.
Right. So thank you, Ruchi, for the lovely introduction. And there's a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah,
May I
yeah.
request others
Some,
to go into mute mode?
yes, sir.
Right. So thank you, HR Milestone team, and for all the efforts and keeping us highly engaged. What is really beautiful is that day on day, every day, a session, and sometimes even two sessions, organizing it and helping the HR community is really commendable. And the follow up that you guys are doing just to see that this happens. So thank you so much, the HR team here in Milestone, and also for all the participants. So for attending and taking time out to spend your valuable time here. I hope the next 1 hour that we're going to spend together would be meaningful. The topic that I've chosen today is managing emotions and counseling for hope during times as such, or as times such as these. Okay, I'm Sundeep and I'm from Bangalore. I would like to begin with setting up the objectives of what I'm trying to achieve for today. I have set out the objectives keeping in mind the overarching application where one can apply these tools or principles that I'm sharing for yourself, for your managers, and for the downline in your organizations. So the 3 pointers that I would like to keep in mind, or the objectives that I would like to keep in mind as I make this presentation and discuss on certain issues, is to look into a scientific research on thoughts and emotions. And the second thing is trying to demystify the paradox, because many people say, is there a hope in the midst of suffering? How is it possible to have hope in the midst of suffering? And the last pointer is, or the objective is, to share a practical and effective model which I have used through the course of this presentation. Would be able to share that with you so that you can counsel any person. However, we do need to keep in mind that when we are involved in developing people and counseling people, it is a process that needs to go through all steps, all phases, and at times it can be a little long. So keep that in mind. I'm trying to power pack the session in 45-50 minutes. And if there's anything that you need to clarify, we can have a Q&A in the end, as well as my contacts are there at the end of this presentation. You could get in touch with me. I would be sharing key slides later on. So for those of you who want a copy of it, I can just contact Ruchi or the HR team. I will be able to share that with you. Before I get into the main topic, there is a basic premise under which I would like us to understand how I go about counseling people, or how about counseling others in need, right? So there are beliefs and values of human beings. And without these basic beliefs and values about people, it becomes difficult to make a meaningful counseling session work. The beliefs and values of human beings can be summed up in these four. There are many more, but these four are something that are very dear to me. And I would like you all to understand this. The first one is people can hope and they want to hope. Many a times what we believe is that people can hope, but they really don't want to hope. They have reached a position. And I think that's one error that we need to erase from our mind, because people can seek hope and they want to hope. So we need to be very clear that people are not beyond a point of recovery. We can always help people. The second pointer is this: people value involvement and communication. They love to get involved in decision making. They love to get involved in their own development, in their own search for hope. And we need to keep in touch and communicate with them. And the third belief is this: that it is a very sacred activity. And as I make the presentation later on, you will know why it is a sacred activity. Because it just gets deeply embedded into the very DNA of our existence, right? So we have always heard this, love people and use things and not the other way around. And many a times when we look at people around us, at least pre-COVID era, we have been seeing many people, including managers in organizations. They love their job, they love their packet, they love their, the salary package more than people. So they love something else. They love power, they love position, and they use people to get that. But this is the other way around, because it is a very sacred activity. When you are involved in developing people, when you are involved in counseling others, it is a sacred thing to do. And the last one is a very crucial one. Every person has been designed, every person has been made with an independent will of choice. Everything that has been given to us, we need to exercise choice. We have the choice to do the right or the wrong. We have the choice to choose hope from despair. So the choice is an independent issue given to every person. I like to share this particular slide on the grand piano. The question that I have to ask here is, how does it produce music? How does it produce what it is supposed to do, bring meaning to our lives? In other words, what is the grand piano's purpose? When I was doing a study on this, I found that there are over 200 strings. In a grand piano, there is typically about 240 strings that are stretched and put under tension. And the piano has over 7,000 parts. This string, each of them, they are stretched to a point of about 150 to 160 pounds, depending on the density and the diameter of each string. And the way it works is that this hammer, this wooden hammer that you see on the third photograph on your right, just falls on that string, and a music is produced because of the total tension on that string. In totality, the piano has about almost 20 tons of tension on those strings. The, the point is very simple. Unless there is pressure and tension, it does not produce pleasure. Unless there is pressure, it does not produce pleasure or music. Similarly, in our lives, how do we respond to times such as these? When there's pressure in our lives, when there's tension like this in our lives, we are meant to produce meaningful music. I would like you to just think of a guitar that is not strung tightly, and you play music out of it. What happens? The chances are the music will have no meaning in it at all. It will be so shabby, So that's the issue out over here. We are in this situation where we need to be under some amount of pressure. And while we are in the situation of COVID 19, how do we produce music from our lives? Let us look at some lessons that we can learn from the past. uh, when we are in a crisis, so the word crisis, I like the Chinese word for crisis, which is basically two characters. It's called Vi Chi. It has a meaning which stands for danger and opportunity, the same characters. So, in other words, a crisis is always looked at something where not only you're going through some danger, but there are opportunities that need to be seized. Keeping that in mind, let us learn some lessons on human behavior. What happened in the Great Depression of 1929, and it went on till the late 30s. I've been able to collate certain things that happened. Let's quickly go through it and see and compare with today's scenario. The Great Depression of 1929, due to the stock exchange crash and the economic slowdown, lasted for about 12 to 13 years. And the first 3 years were the worst hit, the 43 months. Even before they could get into some action, that is quite similar to what we are going through now in India, the post-lockdown exit plan. We are hardly 2 months into it, but in 1929, it lasted for 43 minutes before the economy could, recover. People were in financial ruins. Oil prices went below the zero mark in -%. Imagine the global GDP declined by around 27%. And because of that financial ruin, they were not in a position to handle their emotional triggers in their life. Mental illnesses were caused, and because of that, there were physical illnesses. And with no money in the market or in their pocket, there was no way to see a doctor. Therefore, it became a vicious cycle of depression and illness, all revolving around money. A study showed that there is a direct relationship between unemployment rates and suicide rates. Unemployment had reached 20%, and if you notice today in the world scenario, we have crossed 20% unemployment rate, and this is just the second month, and it had a negative effect on mental health. It was difficult for those who are mentally ill to procure an employment. Even in the current day scenario, when we do some psychometric tests for people, we find that they are not able to answer well, not do well, because of a negative effect on their mental health. In today's scenario, which is very similar or something that we can expect with respect to human behavior, we see that we not only have seen financial, social, relational, mental, psychological, physical, and medical slowdown, but three primary emotions that have got affected are anxiety, guilt, and anger. Trauma is unpredictable. We don't know what kind of a crisis we are expecting. The vaccine is it going to come? When is it going to come? What about a job situation? Do I have the control? Can I have the control later on? Do I have a freedom? And on top of it, immobility. We're not able to move out. And with this comes additional responsibilities at home, at work, and in society. Post exit lockdown plan, there will be an increase of mental issues because, as it is, I've seen several cases that I'm handling just now. People are going through tremendous financial losses to lakhs and crores. People in real estate, people in businesses, companies are on the verge of closing down, and this is just the first or second phase of the whole crisis. Getting deeper into one's vices, this is very interesting because uh, I like to quote this of Viktor Frankl, which he says, a person that I'll be talking about in the next few slides. He says, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. And how vulnerable we are at times like this to get away from our problems, we get addicted to certain vices, whether it's alcoholism, pornography, gambling, gossiping, or any other addiction that we can think of that we are vulnerable to. And this is today's scenario, often leading to a loss of meaning in life. I know it's a very grim picture that I'm painting out over here, but the question that we are asking here is how do we change our negativity to positivity, from despair to hope? Because eventually, every human being has been given this privilege of a choice. Let me share with you some of the scientific research that has been done on hope. And let's see from here, how do we seize the opportunity like the Chinese character spoke about? We have the danger and we have the opportunity to seize, or rather, we have the opportunity to take advantage of the opportunities that come up, right? The first thing is to have the right attitude. I would like to present to you one Mr. Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist, as well as a Holocaust survivor. This is a picture of the Holocaust. For those of you who are not aware of what the Holocaust was, it was during the time of Hitler's World War II, where he had many Jews arrested and sent to the gas chamber to kill them. And one of the survivors out of the 23 odd thousand who survived was Viktor Frankl. He had something very interesting to say. After having gone through the concentration camp where he lost his brother, he lost his father in a neighboring campsite. He didn't get to see him. He also lost his own wife in another campsite, and he didn't even know whether she was there or not till one day he got to know that she never came back. Everything, this is what he says, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, is to choose one's attitude. So, having the right attitude is about understanding nobody can take away the attitude in us in any given set of circumstances. And I'm sure it draws hope from the situation. We are not in a concentration or quarantine like the way Victor was in, right? So obviously he had the opportunity and he chose hope. And as I explain his story, we will be able to glean certain principles from his own life. He wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. It was based on his experiences in the various concentration camps in Nazi Germany and around there in Poland, etc. He wrote this book, and the Library of Congress in the US says it is one of the 10 most influential books ever. Even today on Amazon, it is rated as one of the top 100 books to be read. And he quotes, he says, if there is meaning in life at all, if there is meaning in life at all, then there must be a meaning in suffering. What I would like you to do is listen to this particular video very carefully. It is just 1 minute 40 seconds. I want you to listen to it very carefully, preferably with a headset, because this is amazing research that is presented to us and to the world over by Dr. Carolyn Leaf. She's a neuroscientist, and her research is mostly on the way we think, the anatomy of thought. And there are lovely videos of hers available on YouTube. I request you to go through them. But I thought this is very interesting to listen to, and please listen to this very carefully.
We are unable to hear this.
You're unable to hear this?
Yeah, it is not audible.
I'm not too
You
sure
have to
whether
give
it's.
permission for audio.
How do I give the permission for audio, please? Ruchi, can you help me on that? Mute.
There might be a button says unmute. Just put your cursor around.
Yeah, okay. Microphone.
Just move it around and you
We
might.
can hear him, but we are not able to hear the video.
Okay, I'm trying to see how to.
Normally that.
You have to actually, sir, in your Zoom setting, you have to enable the computer sound.
The
Or
computer
the
sound.
host has to allow for computer sound.
Okay, so I think Ruchi might have to help me there. Would you be able to do that?
I'll have to ask the host. Just for a moment.
Or do you want me to just skip it and send this audio onto the WhatsApp group later after the session?
Yeah.
Would that be better? I will just highlight what is the features of this particular 1 minute 40-second video. So Ruchi, shall I continue with the presentation?
Yes, so you can just go ahead with the presentation.
Right. So basically, what Dr. Caroline Leaf is saying is that there are over 100 billion neurons that are there in our brain, and they have dendrites. Dendrites are basically branches, and memory is stored in those branches. And those branches holds words and emotions. I would really recommend that you see this video. It's just 1 minute 40 seconds. I will have it sent on the group, and please share it. It's an amazing testimony of how we think. And he says that the mind makes choice impacts, which affects thinking. These words and emotions make choice impacts and affects our thinking. Then it talks about the cell body and the nucleus, which eventually is in the DNA. And the DNA, within the DNA, there are chromosomes, and those chromosomes actually become an integral part of the DNA, which unwinds into the DNA. And this DNA has a genetic code, and we all know that people use genetic codes to identify one person from the other. But there is this genetic code which gets activated. And how does it get activated? It gets activated by a signal. The signal is how you perceive your life, how you think, how you choose, and how you react or respond. And then he goes on to say that it is something that people have forgotten the creator and worship the created. People are more concerned about the created than the creator. And this is amazing, brilliant new science that is out here, and it is with evidence. And what is really interesting to note is that in my first slide, when I spoke about human values and beliefs, that it is a sacred activity. As a counselor, when we are involved in talking to somebody, remember, it is sacred because we are influencing their very thought patterns. It is something that uh, we are involved in the development of that person, and we have no right to abuse that. So that's the kind of a mindset we need to have, and that's the kind of hope we can share with people when they know that our thinking actually decides how our brain works. Coming to the next slide, at times like these, in COVID-19 times, we always think of investment. Where's the best place to invest? People think that it is gold. We need to buy gold now because there's almost a 40-50% increment in the price of gold from 300 to 4,700 per gram. Approximately, that's what I heard. Not that I'm into buying gold, but what's the best investment? Real estate. Do we really invest in real estate? Uh, Dr. Caroline talks about investment. She says that thoughts are our mental real estate. After having seen that video, and when you see it, you will realize that the real estate that is there within us, the mental real estate, that is where we need to invest. And these are real. These thoughts are real, and they really change our brain. And she has one more video. It's available on YouTube on healthy versus toxic thoughts. What happens when you have healthy thoughts, and what happens when you have negative thoughts or toxic thoughts, and what are the consequences of that when it goes through your brain, when it goes through your mind? How do you renew it? There's a lot of psychology around how do we renew our thoughts, and it's important to really consider this proposal that Dr. Carolyn is making. She says this: our brains are made for love, not fear, not performance, not aggression, but love. Just pause for a moment and ask ourselves, uh, what are we doing in our organizational life as an HR professional? My experience has been in the kind of people that I talk to and people who come to me for help. They invariably live out of fear. They're always performance based, and it is how aggressive you are in a fast market. And I think by nature, everything has been designed in such a way now we have to go within ourselves and cool down, slow down, and think. Are we really crossing our limits? There are some other scientific evidence that prove wellness is related to correct thinking. I've noted down three out over here. The cognitive restructuring and optimism research. There are plenty of these articles from Harvard and other recognized universities and from Mayo Clinic. You will find that there are a lot of research that shows how being optimistic helps in the way you uh, get well. And also the gratitude study by Dr. Robert Emmons. You may copy this, or I will have this sent to you later on for reference. Let's get into the word hope. The question I have to ask now is, are there different kinds of hope? So many might say, I think, I'm not sure, but there are two categories what I would like to put in as wishful hope or expectant hope, and the other one is certain hope. I wish this lockdown ends by next week. I wish I can retain my job. They all wishful hope or expectant hope. I hope I get a promotion in spite of all this. So this is where we need to differentiate between what is wishful and expectant hope and what is certain hope. One of the things that Ruchi did not share in the introduction about me is that I've been a medical casualty. In other words, I've been on the operation table 9 times, and 4 times out of that, I didn't know I'm going to come out alive. And keeping that in mind, I started re-questioning a lot of things in my own life. So by the time I come to the last slide, I will share with you what kept me hopeful. Did I have a wishful or expectant hope, or was it a journey that I went through, moving from hope that is there on top and hope that is certain hope? Certain hope is knowing for sure that over a period of time, I am going to do well. When we look at the story of Viktor Frankl, he didn't know he's going to get out of that quarantine. He didn't know that he is going to survive everything that is going to happen there. But yet he persevered. What kept him there? What got him to pass that phase? What was that hope that he was able to hold on to? I would like to further deep dive into that. It is our desire, it is people's desire. Like I said, this is applicable to us, to our managers, and to people downline in our organizations, right? But I would primarily apply it to ourselves. So, certain hope. How do we have this certain hope? One, it requires to overcome hope stealers. There are many things in our life that we do that robs us away from hope. One, it is lack of a personal vision and a purpose. I'm talking of a personal vision, not about an organizational vision. Many times organizations do have visions. My experience is that over 50% of the people don't remember their organizational vision, and sometimes they don't even know what the values are there to drive the vision unless they're reminded. And I'm talking even within HR. Many a times we just miss this whole issue of a personal vision. The second thing is, uh, before I come to the second thing, it's a quote again from Viktor Frankl, which it says, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." Now, how we reached in the concentration camp, what happened, we really don't know. But he had a hope. He knew why he had to overcome his problem. The problem that he was facing was he was in that camp, and this was the hope. When I was doing a study about him, he says, when I was taken to the concentration camp of Auschwitz, a manuscript of mine ready for publication was confiscated. Certainly, my deep desire to write this manuscript anew helped me to survive the rigors of the camps I was in. He's saying, certainly, my deep desire. Now, you might wonder, oh, this is a very simple, desire or a vision that he had or a purpose he had to get out of that strong or vigorous imprisonment that he was going through. But look at context around which he was saying this. He was one of the top psychologists during those days. He was actually a contemporary in terms of the whole psychological theories. When you compare Sigmund Freud, who believed in pleasure as one of the things that need to be addressed to bring about meaning in life, of George Adler, who believed in power, and here was Viktor Frankl, who believed in meaning. I believe that he went through this as a testimony of his own, strengthening his own character of believing a purpose. And this is one of a very strong reason why he wanted to uh, stay alive and get out of the concentration camp. The second hope stealer is a lack of faith in the basic beliefs of human beings and the values of human beings. In the first slide or second slide, I had shared what are the basic beliefs. People can and they want to have hope. People value involvement and communication. People, when you look at counseling people, it is a sacred activity. Learn to love people and use things, not the other way around. And people have an independent will to choose. Those are the beliefs and values. The moment you don't believe this framework, you're actually stealing hope away from you. The third pointer out over here, which is a hope stealer, is that I believe God has given us time, talent and treasures as resources for us to use on this earth while we are alive out over here. He's given us time, He's given us various talents, and He has given us treasures, right? A lack of accountability in each of them, being unfaithful in each of these, or being indifferent to these talents and treasures that has been given to you are definite hope stealers. Looking at the current situation now, we have an abundance of time. What are we doing about it? Are we just squandering away playing with channels on our TV, on Netflix, or are we bringing to good use our time and our talents? So these definitely are hope stealers. The next hope stealer is understanding that we need to have the right thinking. Now, when we look at the life of Viktor Frankl, he went through a lot of suffering, but suffering produces endurance. Endurance is like perseverance, right? This is what Victor said. He said, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. He had a purpose to live, and he realized that whatever suffering was there was ceased to be a suffering for him the moment he finds a meaning for his life. And endurance produces character. Endurance begins when patience ends. In this culture that we have been living, a pre-COVID era, we have actually lost the ability to be patient. Everything was a fast track world, from instant coffees to instant Maggie noodles to instant results to instant performance. Somehow we need to slow down to wonder what exactly are we getting into. But we need to move from patience to endurance. It is persevering, and that produces character. I was trained in a program called Achieving Authentic Success by Ron Jensen. He's a life coach in the US. This was the time when I was in HCL Technologies, and this was a model that was used there. It's called the ABC. You have ABC in a language, but here you have the ABC of life. Your attitudes, like we saw in the first slide where Viktor Frankl talks about having the right attitude. Nothing can steal that attitude away from you. Having the right belief, which means that you need to have the right personal vision. And when you're committed to your attitudes and to your beliefs, you have character. Now, there are various combinations of attitudes and beliefs and commitments, but in brief, in essence, character is a result that comes from endurance. And when you have the right attitude and beliefs of this, right? And character produces hope. And hope is something that will not disappoint. Now, this is not wishful hope or expectant hope. I'm talking of a hope where you go through a journey. You go through a journey, and while you go through this journey, you will go through suffering, and suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character. Character produces hope, and hope will not disappoint. Okay. I move to the next part of our presentation, which is understanding that hope is both cognitive and emotional. In other words, cognitive is a word that is used to describe a deliberate, a conscious decision to use your mental process. I repeat, it is a conscious and deliberate effort to use your mental faculties. In the MBTI language, if people are qualified here in MBTI, or people have done MBTI, it is keeping the T and the F in good balance to understand what emotions are. So cognitive is the thinking ability and the faculty of making decisions, and emotional is the F of the feeling that we have. So emotions is directly related to this. So far I have spoken a little about hope. I'm going into emotions now. How do we manage our emotions? We need to get to the basics of this. Emotions reveal something important about us. They reveal important things about us. When we are sad, if we question ourselves, why are we sad? That thing is a very important issue and that's causing you to be sad, right? So when we express too little of our emotions, it leads to suppressing our emotions and we can not be effective. When we express too much of our emotions, it can lead to over expressing our emotions. That also is not effective. What is really right to do is to acknowledge our emotions. What do you mean, or what do I mean by acknowledging our emotions? One, learn to describe them and not display them. Say, for example, I'm getting really upset and frustrated with this lockdown. I have things at home to be done, and then things are not falling in place. I do have the time. I lost vision. I've lost time. I just feel so incapable. I don't know what my future holds. A lot of anxiety. I feel guilty that I'm not able to, not having planned well for when I was able to earn. Uh, Try to write it down. Try to describe it. What you are going through. Don't display it. Don't throw your anger around, breaking your glass or your TV or your throwing your plates around. Learn to describe them. Once you learn to describe them, we will be able to label them. Then come and say to yourself, this is what is anger. Once we're able to label them, then we'll be able to know what we need. Then you ask yourself, what is the reason why I'm getting angry? Only then can we try to meet that need appropriately. So it's a very important thing. It seems very easy, but it's a very difficult thing to do. So when we are involved in counseling people, when you're involved in actually dealing with the crisis situations, it is very important for the client or the counselee to actually express himself. It is to let him tell us what he has been able to go through, what he can cause that. Is it causing him anger? Is it causing him um, resentment? It is causing him anxiety. Then we go on to say, okay, now that we have been able to give a name to it, what causes it? And then we try to bring in the right thinking. We didn't watch that video, but in the video it talks about when we bring in the right thinking, our neurons, our DNA, our chromosomes, they all get activated by a signal. You see that? Once that gets activated, we can then make choices to influence our life. And a good example is Viktor Frankl himself. A time to slow down. If we have to genuinely manage our emotions, we need to slow down. There's a saying, when you can't go outside, you go inside. And I think that's what the lockdown has done for us. When you can't go outside, we go inside. So what does this mean? It means you need to introspect. I think God has allowed it that we spend time with ourselves, meditate. If you have not discovered a purpose, ask yourself this question: why am I alive? What is the purpose of my existence? We need to ask by making a plan, saying that, okay, let's hope that the COVID lockdown plan will end in a month's time or 2 weeks' time. What can I learn or what will I learn at the end of COVID 19? If you can even ask and keep yourself ready with it, you will start working towards it. In other words, you're bringing in a positive thought into your mind, and that is going to help you recover. We can also ask, what opportunities have I seized? What has come? Am I able to capitalize on it and build on it? For example, when this opportunity came to share in the HR Milestone, I just grabbed it because it is an area of my passion. It is an area of my vision. It is an area of my purpose. So I said, okay, let me take up and see how I can contextualize it to the HR folks, having come from HR. Need to ask ourselves, if I have purpose, have I aligned my purpose? If I have not aligned my purpose during this time of slowdown, am I making no noise or some noise, or am I actually bringing music out of my life? Is that tension causing me to bring music? So these are some very important questions as we go down, slow down during these times. I would like to share with you a model for counseling, which you can use with anyone. Especially the model that I'm sharing here is a tried and tested model on for people in crisis, but for which we need to understand that there are different phases for a person when he goes into crisis. Phase one is when there is some loss, some tension. He's resorting to some problem-solving resources, and the symptoms for that is shock. If you look at it, when the lockdown was announced, when the virus was just spreading, there was disbelief. No, it can't be, I cannot get it. I will be going out. And then suddenly you realize the people on the road, the police is with the lathi sticks out over there. There is a sense of denial. There might be sleeplessness, there might be nightmares. That's phase one. Phase two is when you realize that your own problem solving resources fail. There is a sense of disorganization, and it leads to stress. I believe somehow now we are around phase one, phase two. That there's a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of confusion. At times, there's a little bit of anger also. Why can't the government do this? I'm angry with the politicians. I'm angry with this particular country. I'm angry with the way people are hiding data and not sharing the right information. I'm so irritable about these issues. I don't know what to do. So that's phase two. Phase three is important because this is where people need help. Even as HR, if you realize that once we are going out into this phase, what is our role as HR to bring in sanity in the organizations that we are helping? Because this is where the symptom is a loss of hope. Once if the organizations open up and people start coming into work, you will realize that they will try to cope with additional resources. They will try new methods, and sometimes these methods are not very fun to use. They can be aggressive, right? And it can be basically a reaction to the situation. And this is where people need the most counseling. Phase four is where their needs are unmet and they reach a breaking point. Psychological, psychosomatic disorders, interpersonal, and spiritual issues. Just last evening, it was announced that one of the doctors in the US, uh, I mean, very well to do, lot of money, lot of savings that he had, but he just couldn't handle the number of deaths he was facing on a daily basis. Eventually, committed suicide. It is the ultimate in terms of a crisis where there's total depression, social withdrawal, isolation, long-term addiction abuse, so on and so forth. So obviously, how do we deal with these phases of crisis as a counselor? We help a person in crisis by using the ABC method. Those call ABC, but there is A, B, C, and D. It is basically four-step approach that you have, and it can be used by anyone. It is something like you giving first aid care, primary care, and that takes normally about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions, depending on the person and how he's able to handle it. So when we look at it is about achieving a relationship with that person. Achieving a relationship with a person necessarily means a caring listening, showing concern and warmth, asking the person, please tell me about how are you doing, what are you doing, how's the situation, what about the situation is troubling you. Just basically creating a kind of a relationship, making contact with that person, letting him know that you're willing to work together. And then comes the second part of it, which is B, boil down the problem. Now, this would necessarily mean to reduce the anxiety level of that person. Because when a person is in crisis, you need to actually soothe him down, bring him down. Otherwise, he can land up taking an extreme step, uh, which can be detrimental to his own life. And this stage is where you have a dialogue with him to find out what has he tried before, what he can do, uh, what he should not be doing in terms of what he has already tried, because if it has not worked before, it's pointless trying to do it again. What are the probable consequences of certain things that he's planning to do? Help him to decide. Here we need to keep in mind is you never make the decision as a counselor. You allow the person to make the decision because he takes responsibility and he finds a meaning in his life, right? And then the third one is C, ABC. C is coping with the problem. Let him plan, encourage him to plan, encourage him to make a commitment to that plan. Ask, make it smart. Like we in HR and L&D, we speak about making smart goals. Come out with a smart goal. What specific thing can you do? What motivational thing can you do? How are you going to measure it? In a very informal way of talking, so that he starts taking responsibility and find meaning in what he's doing. How to cope with the problem. If there are any issues of resistance, how do you help him and dialogue with him if he can get out of that? Assure him, that you're going to be there with him. And the last one is about developing an ongoing action plan. This is very critical because you're keeping in touch with the person. You are allowing them, rather instilling hope in that person. And with the follow up, what's happening is you are making him understand what really that problem is that you have boiled down to, and what is the plan that he has committed to. So basically, these four steps do help in handling a person in crisis. Like I told you, it's a long process. It is not something that is instantaneous. It requires several sessions, several Oftentimes in HR, they outsource it. While you outsource it, I will be sharing a slide later. What are the things that we need to keep in mind when we look at helping people in crisis? There are some winning steps for HR on how to bring hope to your organization. The first thing that one can do in your own organization is to revisit your vision and values, not in terms of rewriting it, but visit it with your managers. Find out if they have a meaningful understanding of what their vision is. In one of the organizations, what I noticed is that the vision was saving more lives. But what I could see in that organization is people were saving for their own lives, and it was total misnomer, total deviation of a true vision. So organizations do have, the founding fathers of organizations do have vision statements and values to be followed, but most often people don't do that. Now this is something that I would like you all to do as HR. We have a vision and value for the organization, but one of the things that we lack is that employees need to have a personal vision and value statement. If they have that, they need to align it with the organizational vision. Only then their meaningful existence can be established in an organization. We have a lot of psychometrics, we have a lot of interviews, and we align people to the role, but we have never looked at aligning people to the vision and mission of an organization. So I think that's something that HR can do, because the moment we are able to do that, we are able to align a person's positive into converting those thoughts into optimism, converting those thoughts into positivity. That is a healthy employee in an organization. And healthy employees is what people need to hire, not toxic employees. The second thing that we could do is understand that it is a sacred involvement when we involve with people, and inculcate all the interventions with correct human values and beliefs. Whether it is engagement with the employee, we have to instill hope. We need to bring in these values that we shared in slide number 2. People love to get involved in, they love communication. It is a sacred involvement of loving people and using things, not the other way around. It's about understanding that people need to be given the choice to choose the right thing. Help HR should be involved in the business of helping people to make the right choices. The third one is character development, attitudes, beliefs, and commitments, which I had already shared earlier. I remember the time in 2008, I was in HCL Technologies. And at that point of time, I had a wonderful team, a brilliant team. It was called T2ID. And at that point of time, Mr. Anand Pillai was our leader, and he was heading the whole learning and development function. And at that point of time, with the recession, one thing that we focused on was character development of the people. I remember in 2008, when the recession hit us, Vineet Nair, our CEO at that point of time, he said, I'm not going to lay out a single person. In turn, what he did is, and we played a major role in L&D. What we did is our programs were involved around character development and bringing in security in the lives of people. There was this program called Ron Jensen's Achieving Authentic Success. And what was the result of that? By focusing on character development, I think HCL was one of the few countries in the world, it became a case study in the Harvard Business School, came out with maximum number of IPs in India during a time of recession when the people were having no money. And I think that's something that we need to focus on, character development. Invest in mental real estate. Dr. Caroline talks about this. She says, invest in mental real estate, because when you are investing in that, it has a long-term impact even beyond the life of an individual. Viktor Frankl is no more, but today I can use his example to help others be positive about life. Maybe we need to look at methodologies as part of HR, online coaching, teaching, gaming, etc. Many a times what we do is we outsource these things. We outsource wellness, we outsource counseling. I remember in HCL Technologies also, once again I'm quoting HCL Technologies, and I replicated that in my other organization when I joined as head of learning and development. We never outsourced our training. We never outsourced development of our people, because oftentimes outsourced vendors have a vision of their own. They speak the right things in wanting to provide solutions for organizations, but unless you have a core team that believes in the values and vision of the organization, they will not be able to inculcate that into the workforce. So wellness and mental health and counseling definitely is a area of concern for organizations. It's very easy to put it as part of CSR or part of employee engagement and outsource it, but I think it's a very serious issue. I was in ISB Hyderabad. I had the privilege of meeting Ken Blanchard in person, and one of the questions that was thrown to Ken Blanchard was this. He said that most organizations have chief executive officer. How is it that you have a chief or rather spiritual welfare officer? And Ken Blanchard gave an answer at that point of time, which I thought was brilliant, but many thought it was out of place. But I'm sure in today's context, Ken Blanchard has obviously made his point made then. And this was more than 10, 12 years ago, around 10 years ago. Ken Blanchard said the research that his organization has done, he said there will come a time and we will need somebody to deal with the spiritual well-being of a person in an organization. Now, I consider Ken Blanchard to be a visionary. And in the words of John Maxwell, another life coach in the US, he says that, there are certain people you need to beware of. And visionaries are some people that you need to be aware of even more. Why? Because they have dreams. The beauty about these people is that they have a dream and they're seeing it come to pass with their eyes open, not with their eyes closed. Now, that's the beauty of a person who has a vision, who's a visionary. I share the quote again of Victor, where he says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So, with this winning steps for HR, maybe there is a glimmer of hope as HR professionals. What can we do in our organizations to change ourselves and change our organization? In closing, I would like to share my personal journey of hope. I've gone through 9 times surgery, 9 times on the operation table, not knowing how I'm going to get out of it, at least on 4 occasions. On one occasion, the doctor, the first time, this was in 2002, he comes up and he tells me, you know what, I have to let you know that I might lose you on the table. And this is a cancer surgeon, and when he spoke to me, he's an oncology surgeon. And then when I actually got down to speak to my wife about it, there was something that kept me very hopeful. So what was that kept me hopeful? And as I was preparing this presentation, I asked myself, what kept me hopeful? It was love. It was love that my family was able to give me. It is a love that I was able to share with people. And it is love that has actually been documented in my very personal vision that I have. And love, not only for people, but love for God, because I believe that God loves me. Okay, and that brought about an understanding of my life, understanding of my purpose. I documented this and identified my personal values to drive this. So every time I go for an interview or every time when I meet somebody, I try to understand whether this vision matches or if it doesn't matches. It helps me to make my decisions very clear, very easy. It gives me some direction towards my decision making. And as always, I put there, what next, Lord? I'm excited, and that's why there's an exclamatory mark. It's not a question mark of helplessness, but what next is what I want to see. And those are some pictures that I just recently won in Jan and Feb. This was nationals in Delhi. So thank you so much. I do have my details shared out over here. If you want to get in touch with me, you can. And there's a small testimony of mine on YouTube. The link is there. You may connect out over there. I'm open for any questions. So, Ruchi, it's over to you now.
Hello. So, any questions from anybody, please?
Sir, we will be able to have that video now, I think.
You think
Yeah.
so?
Yeah, we can. You can just try with the video.
Are you able to hear it?
Just a moment.
No,
No.
Not
no.
able to hear it?
I think you have now have the rights to unmute the video.
Yeah.
Eye definition.
Just a moment.
Yes, now we can hear.
Can you hear that now?
Yeah.
Yes, it is now.
Okay, so let me start it from the beginning.
Yes, yes. No, sir, we are to hear it. It just gives a little sound, but no sound, sir. We can't hear this.
You can't hear it?
No, no, no. Again, I mean, there's just a little sound that comes in. So we just thought that.
So
Yeah, you can just share it.
I will share the video on what you call WhatsApp. You can hear it.
Sir, I just wanted to say,
Yeah.
yeah, one way to show this video is you just start running it from the gallery itself.
There's a lot of noise in
And
the
then share
background.
the screen.
Can everyone?
Archana Singh, please switch off your, mute yourself. Archana Singh. Archana Singh. Archana Singh, you are.
You have to mute from your side.
I'll do it that now. I just wanted they should do it, but now okay, I have to do it. I did it. I did it.
Okay. So how do we do this, Ruchi?
Sir, you have to play from the gallery and share the screen. If you have it on your computer.
I think
I have to take it from my computer, is it?
yes.
कंप्यूटर पे क्लिक करेंगे तो शेयर हो जाएगा शायद. यार मैं सोलंकी में एक सिखा रहा हूँ ना, अच्छी अच्छी बातें करेगा तुमने बहुत अच्छा किया लेकिन मैं तुम्हारे पास सैलरी कटवाने एक चीज अच्छी गई थी 2-3 वीक को 2-3.
So I've got the video from my hard disk. Do I play it through the?
Yeah, I think you can play from there itself.
Play it from here.
Yeah.
Is it listening?
No.
No. Actually, sir, the computer sound is not enabled on Zoom. On your Zoom, you have to enable the computer sound.
सर जी एक काम करना आप मुझे शेयर कर देना. I will share on the groups.
Okay, I'll send that to you now.
Right, sir. Right. So I'll put it on the group.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay.
So let us go to question answer session because I missed the important, but I could attend the most important part of HR role that I could attend. I missed the important part in the initial stage.
Okay.
So I have to go through video again.
Okay, absolutely, it'll be good.
So rest of the people who are here, they can just, if they want to ask anything. Rishi?
Yes, sir. Any question from our participants? Yes, Mr. Sanjay, you can unmute and ask a question. Sanjay Sharma.
Hello, sir. This is Jisha Matthew over here.
Hi, Jisha.
Sir, I just wanted to ask you how realistic and how practical would be. I'm not working in the HR, but I'm a teacher. How, like in my organization also, teacher among teachers or anybody, like not involving the children. How realistic and how practical would be the things that you have said, like hope, love, all those things? Because the moment you start hoping or you start loving the other person, loving in the sense it's not the it's the brotherly kind of love. It's so if that kind of thing, immediately people start taking advantage of you.
Correct.
And even hoping, because there's so much of politics down there in the HR. You have to be sharp like a snake, and you can't be innocent like a dove.
Correct.
Over there. So how can we put these things, so realistically and practical into our lives?
I think one thing that that really becomes important for a counselor is to have a personal, testimony of being real. Somebody who values ethics. When we get accredited as counselors, one of the top priorities that we are asked to look into is our own personal lives. So if you are involved in the people development space, whether as a manager, I think we are always involved in what you call people development. So you might not be in the corporate setup, you might be at home. You are developing your children. And if you look at today's children, it is so difficult to deal with them, right? So I want to again represent this slide out over here. These are some amazing principles and truths that we need to have as an underlying belief in ourselves. And when we are going through a difficult phase, I've gone through horrible times in my organization, where I was working earlier. And if I were to be dealing with, even with my manager, at times I need to understand that he is being designed in a particular way. He is being influenced by the world. Okay,
Right.
the world is very wicked.
Right.
Okay, you will find that people are taking advantage of you. People don't want to grow. But then we should not use that as a premise. The premise is this, that people can desire hope and they want to desire hope. Right? So actually, it is a struggle that they are going through and they are manifesting it through that behavior. So when we get into counseling, that's the first thing that I do. I allow them to manage their emotions. So you need to understand that it's a two-way process. Counseling can never be a one-way process. So you build a friendship, you build a network with that person, and you say, okay, listen, I want to talk to you, you talk to me, okay? And then in the context of an informal setting or a formal setting, if it is, you find out the emotion. What is the feeling? So in your case, say for example, you know that somebody is taking advantage of you, and what does it make you feel? So if you come to me for counseling, the first thing I would ask you is, what are you feeling about it? Do you feel upset that they're taking advantage of you? Because remember, I told you there are three primary emotions.
Yes.
Okay, one is anxiety. It's out over here. Anxiety. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah. So you have anxiety, you have guilt, and you have anger. Most of the emotions are actually narrowed down to this. So in this case, when somebody is taking advantage of you, the first question that I would ask is, what does it make you feel? Can you tell me, describe what emotions you're going through, right? And if you are not able to, I keep challenging you to talk about it. And then I would probably suggest to you, do you have a kind of an anger against this person? And then when you're able to label that, okay, now if you come to me and tell me, listen, this guy is taking advantage of me. Now, if you don't share it with somebody, you are bound to explode. You're bound to go into depression, or to the other extent, you're bound to manage your emotion by displaying it rather than accepting it. And when you display it, how would you respond? You might even hit him. I'm talking of an extreme case.
Right, understood.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is, if we can get to the point, how realistic it is very realistic, because now you're getting into talking into the very person that you're dealing with. Now that's why it is a slow process. There is a general principle in life, it's easy to destroy, but very difficult to build. Now you're here into building a person, you're building an environment of hope. How do you do that? For his good and for your good. Now, in your case, if you have anger and you're upset with this person, I ask you, okay, what's causing you that? So when you look at the emotion involvement in it, yes, there is anger. And what is the behavior that you're replicating? Okay, let me give you a model that is very practical for you, and that will probably help everybody.
Okay.
Okay, I have put this kind of a U shape out over here. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I were to look at it, I would put out over here problem feelings.
Okay.
Okay, say anger. Now, problem feelings are a result of problem behavior.
Right.
Or rather, problem feelings come in because of problem behavior. And why do we have problem behavior? Because there is a problem thinking.
Comes
You
to
have a
the
wrong understanding of the situation, and it's
right.
leading to problem behavior. So if
Right.
you over or under experience, emote yourself, it will lead to this. Now, what is the opposite of problem feelings? Is the right feelings. So what is it that I want you to get? I want you to have the right emotion. Rather than getting angry, I want you to be mature and I want you to handle it. So this is exactly the opposite, right? What is the opposite of problem behavior? It is right behavior. Instead of trying to break and hit or whatever, you are able to control and be mature in the way you carry yourself. Okay. Now, I have not come to the crux of it. I have not come to the core of it. If there is problem thinking, the right thing would have is to have the correct thinking. Now, considering the person that you are, what I understand is you're a very conscientious person. You like people. You like to be fair with people. So, in that sense, you know it is not right to hit person. It's not right to go and slap him. It's not right to take a knife and stab that person because he has done something really vicious against you. Am I right? So, keeping that in mind, I need to bring in the right teaching. The right behavior. I need to give you the right teaching and counsel and training. Okay, all in the process of counseling. So what's happening out over here is I take you from problem feeling to problem behavior, ask you, okay, you're feeling angry. What causes you to get angry? What is the reason why you're, getting into this kind of a behavior and feeling? Give you the right teaching and elicit from you. Probably if you are a God-fearing person, then I would say, is it right for you to hit somebody? And then I would say, okay, if it's not right, then what should be the right way of thinking? So I arrest this behavior. You're getting it? And then I move. If you look at this arrow that I've drawn here, left, down, right, it's literally taking a U-turn. You're getting my point? And that's what you're aiming at, right? So your question, is it realistic? It is practical. Yes, it is realistic. Yes, it is practical. Depending on whom you're dealing with, is that person willing to submit to a counseling point of view? You might do it with your child. And I'm telling you, practicing this with our children is far more difficult than practicing it with others.
Right.
Because you can't afford to lose out on the relationship, you see. So definitely it is a realistic thing, a very practical thing. And what I've done in this presentation is to show you that there is a mind that is objective, which is thoughtful, a deliberate process of the thinking faculty of a human being, as much as there is the practical, emotional, rational that we need to have while we are emoting our behaviors. So it is possible, but it is a process that would be necessary to believe in those fundamental values that people have. They love involvement. They love communication. It is a sacred activity what you're doing. It is something that God wants you to actually be at peace with each other, to be in reconciliation with each other. Am I right? And you have a choice now. So either you help that person or you move out away from there, so that you don't get trampled by that person. Right? So there are other issues of forgiveness and other that all that comes in the teaching that you see in the slide out over here. What is the right teaching needed for that person to get out of that problem? Sometimes it takes years. It's very difficult to forgive a person. But I've known people who have been able to forgive over a period of few sessions. So thank you for that lovely question, Jisha.
Thank you for the wonderful explanation. It was very
Mr. Sundeep, Sanjay here. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Please, Sanjay.
Yeah, so many times it happens during a crisis, or if you are facing a critical situation, there is a freeze response, and because of that response, instant decisions which might be required cannot be taken or cannot be taken right. So how does a person handle a freeze response if they are kind of into that?
I wouldn't know what the crisis situation is, but the first thing that I would do is, because I do get a call suddenly from a stranger and say that, listen, I want to talk to you, I've been recommended to talk to you. What I do is I ask myself, what phase are they in? And it takes me almost about 45 minutes to 1 hour to understand if he's emoting any problems. Because then I go back to the previous model that I was just sharing. Okay, so if I can understand what phase is he in, is he really in a crisis? Like you use the word crisis. What level of crisis is he in? Is he into a point where if I don't address it, he's going to land up committing suicide? Then I take it off my hands. What I do is I recommend him to a psychiatrist, because I'm qualified to handle only up to a level uh, pre-danger zone. When it comes to the life of a person, I'm not qualified to handle that. But anyway, now if it is a crisis situation that is in phase 1 and 2, then as I'm talking to him, I'm able to find out what is really the issue that he is dealing with. Is there a problem feeling? Is there a problem emotion that he's emoting? And then I ask him questions around that, and you could probably do that. If he's frozen and if he doesn't want to have help, make yourself available. I would recommend the first method out of here, achieving a relationship. That's where you need to have a caring relationship, a caring concern for that person. Your listening skills should be more out of caring rather than trying to say, listen, come on with it here. I want to solve this problem for you. Remember, it's a two-way process. So somebody who is frozen, doesn't want to open up, you have to achieve it by building a relationship. It is providing first aid. At least he doesn't go to a point of no return. Your responsibility as a counselor, as a person who is involved in his well-being, is to help him get out of the situation. Sometimes it can take hours, months, years. Are you willing to invest that amount of time? And I think people are worth it to invest that amount of time.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Ajay.
So I think I'll just sum up.
Sure, Ajay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sundeep, for